Hey y'all, welcome back to my channel. I know it's been quite a while, but if you couldn't already tell by my voice, I do have the flu right now. So please disregard the way that I'm speaking today. Anyways, you probably clicked on this video because you're trying to get back into reading, or maybe you're in a slump and you need some good book recommendations to getting back into reading, and so this is the perfect video for you. I started taking reading seriously in 2023, but I've always been a big reader. I've always loved reading since I was little, so a lot of these are really popular. You'll see there's a lot of these that probably have gone viral on Book Talk and all of that, but there are some other ones that I haven't seen being recommended before in this kind of context. A lot of these are kind of just chosen based off of how fast I went through them and how much they got me back into reading. I've separated them into genres. We have romance, literary fiction, historical fiction, thriller / mystery, fantasy / magical realism, and classics. I'm gonna start with romance because I feel like that's the most popular genre going around right now. So, for the first recommendation, I have The Dead Romantics by Ashley Poston. This is like a romantic comedy with elements of the supernatural and the paranormal. It follows a successful romance writer who has lost her belief in love after a tragedy she's just gone through in her life. Her name is Florence Day. When she returns to her family's funeral home in her small hometown, she comes face to face with the ghost of her recently deceased editor, Ben, who needs her help to complete his final project. She finds her love for writing again, and they kind of just create a connection. That's what it's about. It's really humorous and it's super fast-paced. It's a really short book, and I honestly really flew through it. This book is perfect for the fall time, so if you are gonna read this, I recommend you wait until the fall time to read this. It really just has those cozy fall vibes. Also, it explores grief in kind of a not so serious way. Like I said, it's a humorous book, but there are also some elements of grief in there. The second recommendation I have for you is the Boys of Tommen series by Chloe Walsh. Now, this is supposed to be a YA book series, but I honestly don't consider it a YA book series at all because there are a lot of really deep topics in this series. So if you do choose to read this, please look at the trigger warnings before you go on to read it. This series is a gripping and emotional romance that follows the lives of different teens that are in a close-knit group. They all have their own personal struggles that they deal with throughout the series. So the first book follows Johnny and Shannon as they navigate their love, friendship, and their own personal growth. All of these books have lots of drama in them, and honestly, that's just what makes it so fun. So you will cry in at least one of the books in this series, and it will make you you will get so connected to the characters, they will feel like your own family. So if you're into that, and give this a little read, give this a try, if you will. Next, I have two pretty similar recommendations here. We have Every Summer After by Carly Fortune, which is a coming-of-age romance that follows the story of Percy and Sam. It alternates between two timelines of their childhood summers spent together at Sam's family lake house and the other timeline, which is them in their adult life. They were once very close, but after something that happened, they drifted apart. But later, Percy returns to the lake house, and the two find each other again, and that's basically just what happens. They rekindle their relationship and they navigate their past heartbreaks, and they talk about unresolved conflict that happened between them. This is basically the same book as the next series I'm about to recommend, but it's just more adult. There's more adult content in this one. So I'm just gonna go on to the next one. The next one is The Summer I Turned Pretty by Jenny Han. This is also a coming-of-age trilogy that follows this girl named Isabel, actually. Twin. It follows the summer she spends at a beach house with her mom's best friend and her mom's best friend's two sons. Really, I just love these two books, the vibes they give. Definitely read them during the summer, or maybe if you're one of those girls that during the winter you just miss the summer so bad, read this during that time. The vibes are just immaculate and they're super fast paced. The Summer I Turned Pretty series, all those books are super short. I think I read 2 of them in one day. That's how freaking fast I read them and that's how good they were. So definitely amazing books. I love these books. Did you guys think I could go one video without mentioning the Magnolia Park series? I don't think I could go a video without mentioning it. The Magnolia Parks universe is a series of 5 books. It follows the complicated relationships between some wealthy young people that live in high society. The series mainly follows Magnolia Parks, although there are a couple books that follow Daisy Hates separately. So there's 3 Magnolia Parks books and 2 Daisy Hates books, but they both make appearances in each of the different perspectives, if that makes sense. Anyways, it follows Magnolia Parks and her difficult on-again, off-again relationship with her longtime love, BJ. This series is definitely known for how it depicts emotion. That is really why I love this series so much. It feels so like real. I don't feel like I've ever read a book that has made me understand myself more, but these did, especially the Magnolia Parks ones. Just the way that Jessa Hastings wrote these characters, I felt like they were real people and they just live in London and they're thriving. You know, they're living right now. Anyways, I love this series so much. If I could recommend you guys to read any of these from like the romance category, it would be the Magnolia Park series, just because I love it so much. But that being said, I know there are a lot of people that don't like this series, so maybe do a little research into it before you make a commitment to reading this series. Anyways, that's all I have for the romance category. Next, I have the literary fiction category. My first recommendation is Normal People by Sally Rooney. It's been a while since I've read this book, but I do remember that I really loved it, and also the writing is gorgeous. It's so simple yet so heartfelt and deep, if that makes sense. So, it follows the complicated relationship between Marianne and Connell, who are classmates in a small Irish town. The book takes place over some years. They start in grade school when they're super awkward, and then like university and beyond that. This book has a lot of themes of mental health and the difficulties of intimacy and the reality of relationships. Honestly, if I could tell you like one thing about this, is read this if you want to question and reflect on every single relationship that you have or have ever had. That's honestly how I felt reading this book. Next, I have Remarkably Bright Creatures by Shelby Van Pelt. This was an amazing book. I don't think that I've ever had such a visceral reaction to this book. I cried and I cried. So if that tells you anything, you know, I love a book that'll make me cry. Anyways, so this is about the very odd relationship between Tova Sullivan, who's a lonely widowed woman in her 70s, and Marcellus, who is a giant Pacific octopus who lives in the small town aquarium that Tova cleans and takes care of. And as the story goes on and unfolds, Tova's life begins to intertwine with those who live in the town that she also lives in. And Marcellus actually helps Tova in a way to uncover some lifelong secrets while she forms a bond with this octopus. It sounds fucking crazy, but I love weird books like this. I love books with a weird plot, a weird something going on. So if you're looking for something that's different but really good, this is a great book to read. Next, I have Firefly Lane by Kristen Hanna. If you haven't heard of Kristen Hanna, you probably live under a rock. Firefly Lane is about the lifelong friendship between Kate and Tully. It starts in the 1970s, and it follows them over the decades from like their teenage years to adulthood, through marriage, motherhood, and personal struggles. Tully and Kate are very different. Tully is a driven and ambitious woman, and Kate is more reserved and family oriented, and they navigate the challenges of how different they are in their personality and their careers and their relationships. But despite their differences, they remain lifelong best friends. And honestly, this was really a sad book, but it was so real. It honestly depicted relationships and friendships between women so well. I thought of my sister a lot and a lot of like past friendships I've had while I read this book. So yeah, I definitely recommend this. It was a great book. Next, I have The Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo by Taylor Jenkins Reid. This is about the scandalous life of Evelyn Hugo, who was a Hollywood icon from the 1950s. The story is told through the perspective of a journalist named Monique Grant, who was chosen to write a biography over Evelyn's life. Over the course of the interviews with Monique and Evelyn, she reveals the truth behind the 7 marriages that Evelyn had and the people she loved and the sacrifices she made to get where she is. And as Evelyn opens up about her past, these secrets change Monique's life as well. This book is really also a beautiful depiction of human relationships. This has also been a very popular book on Book Talk, so I definitely know that there are people that agree with me on this one being a good one to get back into reading. I remember there was a plot twist in this somewhere, and I was like, holy crap, this is amazing. This is amazing. Oh my gosh. And that's all for literary fiction. Now we're going to move on to historical fiction. For the first one, I have The Things We Leave Unfinished by Rebecca Yarros. This is a novel that weaves together the stories of 2 women from the past and the present as they navigate love, loss, and healing. It follows Charlotte, who is a woman who inherits her late grandmother's journals that tell the story of a romance during World War II. And as she reads the journals, she becomes deeply connected to her grandma's past, and she begins to uncover long-hidden secrets. As she does this, she faces her own personal struggles with love and grief, and she ultimately learns about the strength and resilience that ties generations together. I don't really remember reading this, but I do remember that after reading this, I just wanted to keep on reading. That was how powerful and impactful it was on me. It was a great story. It had elements of romance in there, obviously historical fiction. There was sadness, there was humor in it. I definitely recommend this to anybody who enjoys historical fiction books. Next is The Nightingale by Kristen Hanna. Again, we have a Kristen Hanna book. So this is a historical fiction novel set during World War II in Nazi-occupied France. And it follows the lives of 2 sisters, Vianne and Isabel, who have very different approaches to how they deal with this war going on. So Vianne, the older sister, tries to protect her family and keep life as normal as possible, and Isabel goes out and wants to join the resilience and fight back and be rebellious against this war. And so she becomes involved in the French resistance, and it tells about how they deal with these differences. It's also a dual timeline as well, so there's the past and there's the present. So in the present, we are in the perspective of one of the sisters, but we don't know which one. And at the end, something is revealed, and it's just super emotional and sad, and oh my gosh, the reaction I had, I was sobbing. I read this on vacation, don't do that. But yeah, I was sobbing. And then for the last historical fiction recommendation, I have The Secret Life of Bees by Sue Monk Kidd. I love this book. My mom had this book, and it was sitting on her shelf for so long, and I would always look at it, and I'd always be interested in reading it, and I'd read the first page, and then I'd kind of forget about it. And then I actually took the time to read it, and I was really surprised at how much I loved this book. So this is a coming-of-age novel set in the 1960s in South Carolina. It follows Lily Owens, a young girl searching for answers about her mother's death and her journey of self-discovery. After a troubled childhood with her abusive father, she runs away with her housekeeper, Rosaline. They end up seeking refuge with 3 African-American sisters, and they own a honey farm. And as Lily becomes close to the sisters, she learns a lot of important lessons about race and love and forgiveness. Honestly, I recommend this book to everybody. This is such a good book. I think it'd be really impactful for a lot of people. It really just is a great book. It makes you feel very emotional, and it makes you reflect on a lot of things. So the next genre I have is thriller/mystery. The first one in this category is the Natural series by Jennifer Lynn Barnes. I highly recommend anything by Jennifer Lynn Barnes. I've heard that the Inheritance series is also a very good series. The books are short, it's fast-paced, it's thrilling. Anyway, so The Naturals is a young adult crime mystery series that follows a group of teenagers who have abilities and are recruited by the FBI to help solve cold cases. Cassie Hobbs is the main protagonist, and she's a highly skilled profile with a talent for reading people. She inherited this gift from her mother's work in the same field. She joins this group of teens, each who have a unique skill, and together they work on complex cases involving murder, deception, and psychological manipulation. As they uncover dark secrets, the team members also grapple with their own personal histories and the dangers of getting too close to the cases they're solving. There are 4 books, and each book follows a different case that they are solving, and ultimately the end one ends up being a case about Cassie's mother, who is presumed dead. That was a really interesting part of this. It was super, what's going on at times. I was kind of confused at times, and this is a YA series. These will definitely keep you entertained. You get the perspective of the killer as well in all of the books, so that's also a really cool element to it.
Hey guys, and I'm so sorry, in these next few clips, Glenn came home from work, so you can hear him shutting doors and putting stuff away. So I'm sorry that the audio is kind of botched in these next clips. Please disregard. I'm so sorry.
The next book is The Maid by Nita Prose. This is a mystery novel that follows Molly Gray, who is a socially awkward maid who works at a luxury motel. She lives a somewhat isolated life, struggling to understand social cues, and often she feels out of place. And one day, she discovers a wealthy guest dead in his hotel room. So, as the investigation unfolds, Molly becomes a prime suspect due to her unusual behavior and the secrets she uncovers. This book just makes me think of the saying, I support women's rights and women's wrongs, which I do. I love this character. I don't know, she's really quirky and kind of I'm not like other girls vibes, but in a really good way. She's the mysterious girl. You know what I'm talking about? Anyways, I love her. I think she's so cute. That's all I'm gonna say. Next is The Silent Patient by Alex Michaelides. Sorry guys, I don't know how to say it. This is a psychological thriller about Alicia Berenson, who is accused of murdering her husband Gabriel. After the crime, she becomes mute and is institutionalized in a psychiatric hospital, and she refuses to speak a word, so she's completely mute. And as Theo delves deeper into Alicia's past and her troubled relationship with her husband, he begins to unravel shocking secrets. There's lots of plot twists in this book, and it's very thrilling, and it keeps you invested in it the whole time. The next genre is fantasy/magical realism. And for the first recommendation here, I have The Green Mile by Stephen King. Oh my god, I love this book so much. It is so sad. So sad. Oh my god. Tears are forming in my eyes right now. Don't look at me. This is about a death row prison set in 1930s. The story is narrated by Paul Edgecombe, who is a former prison guard. It follows the lives of the men on death row, but the central focus is on John Coffey, who is a gentle giant with a supernatural ability to heal others. He's been convicted of a crime he may not have committed, and as Paul and his colleagues witness John's extraordinary gifts and begin to question the justice of his sentence, they must confront the dark realities of the death penalty, guilt, and redemption. It is based on the story of George Stinney Jr., who was an African American who was wrongfully executed. I definitely think everybody should know his story. It's very sad and it's very serious. This story also obviously has some magical realism in it, since he's a healing person, and I just think it's just a great story, and I think everybody should read this. There's also a movie. I watched the movie. It definitely wasn't as impactful as the book, so definitely start with the book. The next recommendation I have is Divine Rivals by Rebecca Ross. This is a fantasy novel set in a world where gods and mortals are locked in a conflict that threatens to tear everything apart. It follows 2 main characters, Iris and Roman, who are working as rival journalists during a brutal war between the gods. Their lives become intertwined when they are assigned to cover the same stories, which uncover powerful secrets about the divine forces at play. And as their relationship evolves from competition to something more, they must navigate not only their growing feelings for each other, but also the dangerous forces that are conspiring against them. I didn't much like the second book, but the first book was super good. So anyways, this was like a really fast, really like gripping story with elements of fantasy. The next book I have is The Institute by Stephen King. You all know I love Stephen King. This is one of my favorite books by him. This is a novel about a secretive government organization that kidnaps children with special abilities and subjects them to cruel experiments. The story follows Luke Ellis, who is a gifted 12-year-old boy, and he's abducted and taken to the Institute, where children with telekinetic and telepathic powers are being exploited. He forms a bond with the other kids at the Institute, and they plan an escape. At the end scene is low-key like the most badass scene I've ever read. It was awesome. It was so cool. Are you kidding me? But this was honestly just a really cool plot and was super gripping. Like, I didn't want to stop reading. I think I read this during school, and it was hard for me to put it down in between classes. But yeah, definitely an interesting plot, definitely super fun to read. And then the last genre I have are classics. For people who want to maybe get started with classics, these would also be good recommendations for that as well. So the first one I have is Of Mice and Men by John Steinbeck, which was the only book I've ever read for a class that I actually enjoyed. Almost brought me to tears, actually, so that's even better. So this one is about two displaced migrant workers, George Milton and Lenny Small, and they try to make a living on a California ranch. George is small, quick-witted, and protective of Lenny, who is a gentle giant with a disability and has trouble controlling his strength. Despite their differences, the two share a deep friendship and dream of someday owning a piece of land together. But their hopes are crushed when Lenny accidentally causes a tragedy, leading to a heartbreaking conclusion. Heartbreaking, it sure as hell is. It was so sad. Oh my god. It's a novella, so it's super short, very easy to read, and yeah, I definitely think this is a good classic to start with. Next is The Picture of Dorian Gray by Oscar Wilde. This is also a great classic to start with. This was the classic that actually got me to start reading more classics. So this is a philosophical novel that explores themes of vanity and morality. It follows Dorian Gray, who is a handsome young man, and he becomes infatuated with his own beauty after having his portrait painted by an artist named Basil Hallward. He's influenced by Lord Henry Wotton, and Dorian embraces a life of indulgence, selfishness, and excess, while his portrait mysteriously ages and reflects the corruption of his soul. As Dorian's actions become more reckless and immoral, the portrait becomes increasingly monstrous, while he remains youthful and unscathed. It was a very reflective novel. It makes you question yourself as a person and if you are a good person or not. Chapter 11 of this book was fucking insufferable. I honestly skimmed the whole thing. So if you do go to read this book, if you do skip chapter 11, you aren't missing anything important. And then the very last recommendation I have for you guys today is The Giver by Lois Lowry. This is a dystopian novel set in a highly controlled society where emotions, memories, and individuality are suppressed to maintain peace and stability. It follows Jonas, a 12-year-old boy who is selected to be the receiver of memory, which this is a prestigious role that involves learning about the past from an elderly man known as the Giver. As he begins his training, he uncovers the truth about the society's dark secrets, including the cost of eliminating pain and choice. He must decide whether to accept the world he has always known or take action to change the future. This book was actually gifted to me by one of my mom's friends, and I put off reading it for a while, and then I finally did last year, I believe, and I was very surprised at how much I liked this book. It honestly gave vibes from like The Hunger Games, Fahrenheit 451, all those dystopian novels. It makes you feel like you're crazy in a way and you wish you could do something about what's going on in the book, if that makes any sense at all. It's a good book to read in today's time, with everything that's going on with the world and politics and all of that good stuff. Next, I have some honorable mentions of like authors that I think are really good for people who want to start reading. This first one, I haven't personally read any of her books, but I know a lot of people who read her books and enjoy them thoroughly. So with that, I have Frida McFadden. She writes thriller mystery books, and apparently they're really plot twisty and just gripping, I guess. So I can't really say anything about her, but there you go. Have at it. Look, do some research into her. I also have Stephen King, who he writes horror, mystery, thriller, all that good stuff as well. I love Stephen King. Emily Henry, who I also have not read anything of, but I do own 3 of her books, so I will be reading her soon. I just hear of a lot of people that love her books. She's super popular, so definitely also look into her. Frederick Bachman is another great author to read. I just read Beartown by Frederick Bachman, and I have a few more of his books on my TBR. I feel that I can recommend him. I think he's a really good author. And then Elsie Silver. Elsie Silver is for the girls who want a cowboy. Elsie Silver is for the girls who want a country man. I personally don't have a preference for having a countryman, but I do love her romance stories. So anyways, that's all I have for you guys today. I'm gonna be making a video on tips to get back into reading or to get started with reading, so definitely look out for that in the near future. But anyways, I had a really good time telling you guys my recommendations. Let me know if you enjoyed the video. But yeah, I will see you guys in the next video, so bye!